President?
The senior senator from Delaware.
Mr. President, Senator, my colleague from Delaware and I are close friends, and we ride a train, same train together a lot of days coming and going to Delaware. And I like to think we think alike and share a lot of the same values. And it was interesting listening to his remarks about Vernon Alston that actually reflect and track fairly closely with what I'm prepared to say, but there's some differences. And but I'm happy to be here with him, and I think it's great that we're here. And I think we're also speaking for John Carney, who's our congressman, and who would, if he could speak on this floor, he would join us today as well. But Mr. President, I also want to join Senator Coons and you, who sit in this chair almost every time I speak on the floor. I don't know how this works out, but it's good to see you. And these new pages that have joined us this week. The man you'll never have a chance to meet, who was a Capitol policeman for, almost 20 years. And Senator Coons has talked about him. I'm going to say a few words about him, and then we'll probably head for the train and head for home. And but let me just say a few things about Vernon J. Alston, if I can, Jr. His dad's also a Vernon J., and who, as Senator Coons has said, passed away at the age of 44. And we did have a big snowstorm. A lot of snow. We had a couple of feet here, and we had almost that much in parts of Delaware. And when Vernon died, he'd actually just finished helping a neighbor dig out from the snowstorm. And that sort of epitomized his life. He was always interested in helping other people, not asking for much of anything in return, but setting a good example, frankly, for each and every one of us. But in life and in death, Vernon epitomized the best of our country's selfless men and women who put their lives on the line to protect and serve this Capitol complex and those of us who live and work in this part of our nation. The U.S. Capitol Police are some of America's finest men and women in uniform. I say this as a former naval flight officer, retired Navy captain. We have wonderful men and women who serve us and all the folks that come from all over the world to visit this place throughout the year. But each day, these officers perform perhaps the most important jobs here on the Hill, not just protecting those of us who are privileged to work here, either as members of the Senate, members of the House, or staffs, but also for the millions of visitors, folks who travel here from not just the 50 states, but a lot of places around this world of ours. Whether these officers are patrolling the grounds to prevent or to detect mischief, investigating suspicious activity, or responding to an emergency, their mission is the same. And their mission is to protect one of our country's principal symbols of democracy, our United States Capitol. Their mission is not one that comes without sacrifice. Just 17 years ago, I remember this to the day. In 1998, two of our Capitol Police officers, not far from the sound of my voice, were gunned down in the line of duty when a gunman opened fire trying to force his way into the Capitol. Vernon, in his service with the U.S. Army Reserve, with the National Guard, and with the Capitol Police Force, Vernon consistently exhibited unwavering courage, devotion to duty, and above all, honor. In the way he lived his life and how we remember him, Vernon reminds each of us of just how good we can be and ought to be. Vernon Alston was born in 1971 to his mom, Barbara Alston, and Vernon Alston Sr. Not in this country, is born in Vicenza, which is a town in Italy, where his dad, Vernon Sr., was stationed in the U.S. Air Force. Vernon spent the first 10 years of his life in Italy before his father was transferred to Dover Air Force Base in Dover, Delaware. There, Vernon attended a grade school on the Air Force Base and later graduated from Dover High School, schools that I've been privileged to be to any number of times. And he went on, though, to attend Howard University here in Washington, D.C., and he graduated from here about 20 years ago in 1995. Vernon was still a student at Howard University when he answered the call of duty, following in the footsteps of his dad, Vernon Sr., and his grandfather, David Alston, who had been a U.S. Army World War II veteran. And in 1991, Vernon joined this is the son, who is the deceased, he joined the U.S. Army Reserve, and he served as an Army Reservist until 1994, Mr. President. After graduating from college in 1995, Vernon joined the District of Columbia's Army National Guard and he served as a member of the Army National Guard for another 10 years. Well, I'm sure our presiding officer spends time with his Guard troops in his home state. We do too. We have an Army Guard and an Air Guard in Delaware. We're very proud of literally thousands of men and women who serve our country. 300 are I think right now over in Afghanistan. We're welcoming some folks home this weekend. But here's what Winston Churchill used to say about people who serve in the Guard or Reserve. He said, and have their own day jobs. And Winston Churchill said, they are twice a citizen. Think about that. Twice a citizen. I know a lot of people who are in the Army Guard who used to be in the Army, and a lot of folks in the Air Guard in Delaware who used to be in the Air Force. And they have their day jobs, and they serve our state and our nation through the Guard. They are 2 times a citizen. And you know what? So was Vernon. So was Vernon. He began his service with the Capitol Police Force 20 years ago. And for those 20 years, he served the Capitol complex and its community, including folks like us here, senators, our staffs, these pages. We're sitting here at the dais today. Members of our families, our staffs, members of their families, millions of folks who visit our Capitol throughout each year. Vernon's positive energy, which Senator Coons has alluded to, his attitude made a lasting impression with his Capitol Police colleagues. In the latter part of his career, most recently, Vernon was stationed at the Capitol Power Plant, which provides steam and chilled water that's used to heat and cool buildings across the Capitol complex. And there at that plant, there was his responsibility to check visitors and staff at the door and work to keep that facility safe and secure every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout the year. According to his colleagues, he always found time to ask others, well, how are you doing? How are you doing? And he possessed the all too rare quality of being a patient listener. My dad used to say to my sister and me that God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth. We should use them in that proportion. Listen a lot more than we talk. And I always admire good listeners, and Vernon was one of those. One of his fellow officers described Vernon as a beacon. A beacon of what? Well, a beacon of positivity, a positive force. And no matter the mission, an early morning for presidential inauguration or a late night with a State of the Union address at the other end of the Capitol, Vernon always wore a smile on his face. In 2008, while Vernon was on the job and patrolling the Capitol grounds, he ran into a woman that he'd actually run into before, named Nicole Davis. And despite attending Howard University at the same time, Vernon and Nicole never really knew each other. But talked to Nicole earlier this week, who also makes the commute from Magnolia, Delaware, just south of Dover, here for years to serve not in the Capitol Police, but to serve our country in another capacity here in our nation's capital. And she told me the love story, or an abbreviated version of it, that when they were at Howard University, roughly the same point in time, Vernon would see her from afar and would admire her, never really maybe summoned the courage, if you will, the temerity to go up to her and say, here's who I am, who are you? But he admired her from afar and sort of wished that he could get to know her. And many years later, while he was on patrol, I think at the first corner of First and Independence, guess who comes walking along? That same woman that he had admired from afar all those years ago. And they struck up a conversation, hit it off, and ended up going out on a date together. And the rest is history. 6 months later, they were married. I know some people who get married that quickly, and I'm one of them. And Vernon and Nicole knew what they were looking for, and they were looking for each other, and they found each other. And have it's a wonderful family that they have raised. And they became, aboard the Spirit of Washington, later they became a husband and wife. After they got married, they moved, in this case, to Delaware. And as I said, Magnolia, the people in Magnolia, their claim to fame is Magnolia, Delaware, a little town, is the center of the universe. And there are probably other places that think they're the center of the university, but the Alston family lived in Magnolia, the center of the universe, for a number of years. Nicole, and as Senator Coons has said, not only did Vernon get up and drive to work every day, but so did Nicole. And they didn't carpool many days. They each drove separately. And they loved Delaware. They wanted to live in Delaware, but they wanted to work here and to serve our nation in different roles. Nicole served and worked for a number of years at the Smithsonian National Zoo, while Vernon was keeping things safe here in our capital. Together they have 5 children, 5 kids. Brittany, a sophomore at Delaware State University, the home of the Hornets in Dover. Yasmin, a senior at Polytech High School, the home of the Panthers, just south of Dover. Brandon, a sophomore at Paul Public Charter School here in D.C. And Israel and Braden, who are both in preschool. In closing, well, I'm not quite at closing, but I'm close to closing, Mr. President. But I want to share a story that we heard from Vernon's mom the other day. And it deals with the time when he was in the 4th grade. Vernon's principal told Vernon's parents that he was a great example to his peers, to other students. The principal said that their son would come to learn about Vernon's, the principal said that he knew he would come to learn about Vernon's accomplishments and achievements in the newspapers years down the road. Think of that. I don't know what my principals were thinking about me when I was in the 4th or 5th or 6th grade, but I don't think any of them ever thought I'd end up here and that they'd be reading about me in the newspaper or watching me on television. But his principal knew, when Vernon was not even 10 years old, that he was a guy who was on his way to being somebody that they could be enormously, his parents could be enormously proud of. And I think it's clear through the outpouring of love and the accounts of so many after Vernon's untimely passing that, his principal was right. And if he's out there listening somewhere and his teachers are out there listening somewhere, I want to thank them for helping to, along with Vernon's parents, raise just a remarkable, remarkable young man. Today I rise to commemorate Vernon, to celebrate his life with Senator Coons by my side and along on behalf of Congressman John Carney, our at-large congressman from Delaware. We want to offer to Vernon's family, particularly to Nicole, their children, friends, and family officers who are our support and our deepest sympathy on your tragic loss and really on the loss of us all here who considered Vernon and those with whom we serve as part of our family. I have I asked my staff to see if they could just find a couple of people who serve in the Capitol Police who might have something to say about Vernon, and I want to just quote them and maybe close out my remarks with their words. These are the words of Officer Scott McBain. Scott McBain. And here's what he said about Vern Alston. Vern Alston was an outstanding human being. To know Vern was to love him. Officer McBain goes on to say, I was privileged to work with Vern for 3 years at the Traffic 1 checkpoint of the House Division on the House side. He treated everyone. He met with patience, with good humor, and remarkable kindness. Great talker who told very funny stories. He also had the rare quality, all too rare quality, of being a sympathetic and a patient listener. We heard that before, didn't we? Smart, positive, always supportive. People would stop by all day to see Vern and share their stories with him. A warm and sympathetic friend to so many. Vern will be greatly missed by all who knew him. Thank you, Scott McBain, officer of the Capitol Police, for sharing those memories of Vernon Alston. And I have one more here from another Capitol Police officer who knew and worked with Vernon. And this officer's name is Michael Woodward. Michael Woodward. And Michael said these words about Vernon Alston. Of all the people I've had the honor to work with, Vernon Alston was by far the most positive, warm, friendly, and outgoing person I have ever met. I would just stop there. How many people do you suppose there are in the world who say those words about us? They happen to be senators or staff or our family. Those are wonderful words. Someone to say about us that we were the most positive or warm or friendly and outgoing person that someone had ever met. What a compliment. Vern, he goes on to say, Vern was always one to greet you with a smile and ask how you and your family were doing. Didn't matter what was going on. If we were coming in early for the inauguration or staying late for the State of the Union, he always had a smile on his face. I never heard him speak a negative word or raise his voice. He treated everyone as a close friend, and again was a positive force and a beacon of positivity. His passing leaves a hole that cannot be filled. Senator Coons closed with a little scripture from the New Testament. I think it was Galatians, if I'm not mistaken. And I think I'll try to paraphrase maybe a little something from Luke and from Book of James. People may not believe what we say, they will believe what we do. People may not believe what we say, they will believe what we do. And we lead by our example. And in our lives, it can't be do as I say, but really do as I do. And Vernon, throughout his life, was a great example, not just to the people with whom he worked on the police force here, not just with all of us who came in contact with him throughout the day or week, but some of these millions of people who maybe their only lasting impression of our country that they really took home with them wherever they came from around the world was this wonderful Capitol police officer who took the time to talk with them, to listen to them, to be patient, and to be helpful, and to be friendly. There's a great lesson for all of us in that. A great lesson for all of us. And for that, Vernon, we thank you. God bless you. And Mr. President, I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk should call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.